Alright, guys, welcome to Mana Drain. This is episode 33. I'm Mox Born again. I do not have with me Eli this time. No, he is not going to pop out of anywhere. We're going to actually bring him on next in the next couple days to talk about our pre-release and talk about the favorite cards that we had and kind of go from there and really have some fun. But today I kind of wanted to talk about really some news that came out earlier today about the ban and restricted list for standard. And then I also wanted to talk about something that has been going on for a while now that we really haven't been mentioning on the podcast, mostly because of the hosts and things like that. Trying to keep a 7-year-old on topic can be difficult at times, but we want to talk about things that he enjoys and things like that. So this is going to be more of a serious cast than anything, to kind of bring some things to light and go from there. But I'm Mox Born again. The Mana Drain is a podcast that we started a while ago to talk about Magic the Gathering, to kind of talk about tournaments, talk about deck building and things like that. If you're not familiar with it, Magic is a collectible card game where you play with these little enchantment creature thing cards, and you cast spells, and you basically it's a board game, tabletop game, and it's a widely respected game for its strategy. It comes out with about 4 sets every year with some supplemental products in between, and we like to talk about all that stuff and really kind of dive into the fun of it, and the tournament level things and things like that. So like I said, today's going to be a little bit more on the serious note, since we'll be talking the fun stuff with Eli towards the end of the week. So stay tuned for that. We'll have a special podcast with him. So today you're stuck with me. The first thing I wanted to get into is the ban and restricted list. We'll get into the my other topic as well. But first I want to talk about ban and restricted lists. Right now there are 3 cards that are banned in standard. I'll pull those up real quick here, in no particular order. I believe they're all actually banned at the same time, possibly. First up is Smugglers Chopper. This is a vehicle. This was part of the banning about a year ago or so, maybe longer. Wizards has this, they like to innovate, and this was one of their innovations, was vehicles, and this was the first set that had vehicles in it, and they weren't real sure how powerful it was going to be. Well, it turns out a 2-mana 3/3 that you can crew for 1 is extremely powerful, and you give it flying, and on top of that, whenever it attacks or block, you draw a card. It just does all the things. So that one was banned. So you'll notice a kind of a theme with all these bannings. So another one that was banned was Feldar Guardian, which is part of a 2-card infinite combo. And when we say infinite combo, that means you can do this thing, and it just repeats over and over and over and over and over and over again until you either win the game through damage, you have unlimited mana, meaning you can cast anything in your hand, or you have unlimited damage or have unlimited life. This particular combo created unlimited creatures that were 1/4s that would be granted haste and attack and kill your opponent, obviously through infinite damage. So that was one that was banned about a year ago or so. And then the most recent one, again, this is something, another first for Wizards, is another type of mana. Well, not a mana, another type of cost, and this is Etherworks Marvel. And you'll notice in its cost, it has these energy symbols with the little symbol with the lightning bolt in it. This is an energy counter, and you spend these kind of like you spend mana, only they don't empty from your mana pool, kind of like mana does. You just have them forever. There's no cards that remove energy, so you can't like combat someone once they get an energy counter. They have it until they spend it. So this Etherworks Marvel basically spun a whole bunch of different, not a whole bunch of different decks, but a whole new era of deck, really kind of around this energy cost, or I guess currency, if you will. This one particular puts creatures or cards. You can cast cards without paying their mana cost. So you accrue 6 energy, tap it, and then you can look at the top 6 cards and pick one and cast it for free. Then you put the rest on your bottom of your library, and you can do it again. So it's a repeatable, thing once you get to 6 energy. And most decks were getting to 6 energy by turn 3, turn 4. So this, you'd have the 6 energy before you had this out on the battlefield. It just so happens that this is another first for Wizards, where they create this new mechanic, energy, kind of like the vehicles, and they really don't know how it's going to function and what it's going to do to the actual game itself. I know they do playtesting and all that, but this was another, just another example of, hey, we didn't playtest this enough, and maybe we should have. So they went ahead and banned it, and what that means is you cannot use any of those 3 cards in a standard tournament. At sanctioned events like Friday Night Magic, things like that. You can still use them in when you're playing with your friends and kitchen table Magic and casually, depending on your play group. But it's not. You can't use it at standard sanctioned events. So let's get into the new ban list, which was released today on January 15th. So the first one, which really wasn't no surprise to me, was Attune with Ether. This is from the Kaladesh set. It's a common sorcery. You pay 1 green, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your library, then you get 2 energy. Right? So you're getting, turn 1, getting a land, getting 2 energy, and ramping up. This goes in the Cub deck, which basically I don't know if I have a copy of it available, but basically the Cub is a 2/2 creature that when it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy, and then you can spend 2 energy to give it +2, 2+2+ counters, or 2 +1/+1 counters. So make it a 4/4, make it a 6/6, and so on and so forth, making it huge. I believe it has trample as well. But at the end of the day, kind of like with the Etherworks Marvel deck, these decks were building so much energy right out of the gate that it was impossible to compete with them, to the point where decks were just completely falling apart, and people were just playing this deck, the energy deck. They call it Teamer Energy, and it's red, green, and blue. And there are some 4-color variants that splash green in there, splash black in there. But they all have the same thing. They all have the first 4 plays are exactly the same. You play a land, you play Attune with Ether, you play a land, you play Cub, and then you attack for 4 and 6 and 8, and you just build, Whirl of Virtuosos in there, so you're getting a whole bunch of energy, that then your opponent cannot interact with. It's a part of the game that, kind of like emblems from Planeswalkers, where once a player gets an emblem, you can't interact with that emblem whatsoever. But the difference is players are able to get this energy level built up right out of the gate, turn 1, right? Turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and you've built up this energy that you can't be stopped with it. Granted, there are some minor workarounds, but it just wasn't feasible, and to the point where it was actually hindering tournament attendance, or not necessarily tournament attendance. It was basically taking over the metagame, where everybody was playing this one deck, or the second deck. We'll get into the second deck here in a second. But this is just the main deck that everybody is playing, just because it was so easy. The cards aren't that expensive. It's made up of a bunch of commons and uncommons, so that it's virtually, it got up to, I think, $300 at one point, which, if you know your standard decks, that's really not that expensive. I mean, if you even take a small walk down memory lane back when Origins was in place, and you were playing with Baby Jace, you're looking at $600, $800 for that deck alone. I mean, you're looking at that card by itself was $100. So, the Baby Jace cards, the Planeswalker card, Vryn's Prodigy was up to $100 a piece. So for that playset, which that deck ran a playset, was $400 just for those 4 pieces of cardboard. This deck, on the other hand, is so inexpensive. for $300, you could take this and grind out GPs, you could grind out F&Ms and tournaments, and you could really make a lot of money if you knew how to play this deck. Pilot this deck. It wasn't that difficult to pilot either. I mean, you're playing card 1, card 2, card 3, card 4, card 5, card 6, and that's the first half of the game. And if you got that that sequence down, there were very few decks that could interact with you past that. And we're talking turn 3. They didn't win on turn 3, obviously, but once you got to turn 3, there was no interaction or very little interaction your opponent could do to kind of set you off course. So oftentimes, game 1 would just immediately go to the energy deck. So this card being banned isn't really, it doesn't hurt too much. I considered it for our dinosaur deck at one point in time, just because the 1-drop search for a land is very prevalent, and being able to kind of curve out. Obviously, this isn't ramp, because you don't get to play the card, so that's kind of why I went against it for our dinosaur deck. So let's see here. So we talked about Warlord Virtuoso, which was in that deck, which is a red, blue, and white Artificer that gives you 3 energy when it enters the battlefield. This is another one that's a 3/2 Rogue Refiner. It's green, blue, and 1 generic. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. Woohoo! So it replaces itself, and you get 2 energy. So you get this 3/2 body that's on curve, can take down a lot of things that you play on turn 3, even things you play on turn 4 that have 3 toughness. Heck, at this point, you get your card back because you draw the card, so it immediately replaces itself. You get a blocker for a turn, and you get energy. So there is no downside to this card. One of the things that I think they need to really revisit is these alternative costs and alternative mana needs to happen at different variations in your turn, right? At the end step, add this. When this creature dies, add this. When this creature leaves the battlefield, or pay this, exile a creature from the battlefield, gain energy. Things like that. To me, that's kind of how energy could have worked. But again, this wasn't a graveyard set, so they didn't want to play with the graveyard. So being a little more restrictive next time would go a long way. Especially at the uncommon and common level. Like, this is a little 1 energy would have been fantastic, or making this a 4 mana cost creature, or taking away the draw card, because that's just added value. So Rogue Refiner has been banned. So with those 2 cards being banned out of the Team or Energy deck, I don't look for that deck to stay afloat very much longer. The next deck that we're going to talk about is Romanov Red. And it got 2 cards banned as well. First is its main card, Ramen Ruins, which is a land desert from Hour of Devastation. It taps for a colorless mana. You can tap it, pay 1 life, add red to your mana, which is, as everyone knows, is a great way. It's essentially a dual land. If you need red, you need red. If you don't, then you can go ahead and just use it for colorless mana. Not coming to the battlefield tapped is a rough part for this card. Now, the reason why it's actually banned is its third ability. You pay 2 red, 2 of anything, tap this, and then sacrifice a desert. Doesn't have to be this one, and in most cases it wasn't. But it deals 2 damage to each opponent. So this is like just a repeatable effect, and would oftentimes just close out the games out of nowhere. People, this deck runs 4 copies of these in every deck, and they were running, probably about half a dozen other deserts to allow them to discard the deserts or sacrifice the deserts to Ramen Ruins. So it would be common for this deck to get to turn 4, turn 5, play a Hazaret, which would halt the game 100%, and then they would just burn you out from there. Right, you've got they've got their hand completely emptied. Hazaret is indestructible, can block or attack. I think it's a 5/5 or whatever. So pretty much nothing's getting through that 5/5. So they'd keep it back for attack or for blocking, and then they would just burn you out with these Ramen Ruins. And of course, there really isn't a lot of land destruction that's even feasible, because that's not fun, right? But when you put a shock 2 damage to target opponent on a land. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, I don't know. So it's very uncommon for Ramen deck Red to actually deal less than 10 damage through Ramen Ruin. So you're talking like, just incidental damage every turn, or just at the end of the game, like, hey, dealing you 10 damage through these, these 4 Ramen Ruins. Enjoy. So at any rate, that one was banned, and then the other card that was banned from the Ramen Red deck is a little weird to me. This one, Rampaging Ferocidon, is 2 generic, 1 red, 3/3 with Menace. It also says players can't gain life, and then whenever another creature enters the battlefield, Rampaging Ferocidon deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. This is used maybe 1 or 2 copies in the deck. It's really used. It was really used to for mirror matches to deal incidental damage when you're playing against another red Ramen Opera Red deck or another aggressive deck. The original reason for this card was to stop the Felidar Guardian combo, but I don't understand why it was left in when they knew they were banning Felidar Guardian, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But yeah, so this one wasn't as a huge proponent to the deck, so I'm not really sure why they banned it. But again, it's 2 cards out of the deck. Now, Ramen Opera Red might still see play. There are some popular red cards in the new set, Rivals of Ixalan. There were some like B cards that were in Ixalan that weren't being used because of how powerful these couple cards that were banned or the deck is. So I do see this deck living on. Teamer Energy, on the other hand, I don't. This is the second round of bannings for an energy deck. I don't think that deck is gonna survive, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. So let's talk. I know everybody can. You can always look at these and review them and be like, oh man, they shouldn't have printed this. This is terrible, and they shouldn't do this, and they shouldn't do that. But let's talk about some solutions here, right? So. If you don't know, the way Wizards prints their cards or prints their sets is they're years in advance, right? So we just got done with the Rivals of Ixalan pre-release. This set will release officially this coming Friday. Now, this set has been done for, I believe Mark Rosewater, one of the developers, said that they have their sets are done at least 1.5 to 2 years in advance. So like if Wizards would be like, you know what, we're done with Magic, they would still have 2 to 3 years of product that's already developed and ready to go in the pipeline. That might be an over-exaggeration, but still, it's well in advance, right? And kind of going back to what we were talking about with the Rampaging Ferocidon, they printed this card probably before the Felidar Guardian was banned, right? This was their answer to it. It comes down a turn earlier, stops players from gaining life, so they can't gain life when the infinite creatures enter the battlefield. But the infinite creatures entering the battlefield would then deal 1 damage to that creature's controller. So they couldn't make that an infinite combo. They would just die. So it's interesting to me that they still, it's just kind of telling, right? So one of the solutions that I came up with that I haven't really seen too many people talk about, or actually I haven't seen anybody talk about, and it's still kind of like an idea in my head, so it's not really completely flushed out, but you look at, there's 2 problems right now with Standard, right? Do you have these really powerful decks, right? And do you ban cards to stop people from playing them? And it's kind of sad then when you open up packs and you crack packs and you're like, oh well, I can't use this card because it's banned, right? That doesn't feel very good. You can still use it in like Legacy and Modern and Vintage and all that stuff if you can. But usually when you buy packs, and usually if you're a Standard player, this is what you care about. So they've got 2 major problems, Standard being a very stale environment for the past couple of years, and they've had some it's been a while since we've had like back-to-back standard bannings, right? You had the Emrakul during, there was like 2 or 3 cards in the Eldritch Moon block that were banned. Kaladesh had 2 or 3 cards that were blocked, and then you had these new cards that are blocked from Ramen Opera Red, and even in the current block that was being removed and banned. So you have all these cards that are being banned, and it's like we want to make the game more accessible and more playable to other people, so we're going to ban these cards to kind of shake up the format a little bit, and maybe let deck 3, 4, and 5 come up and show what they're worth, or maybe this will bring new cards from the newer sets that weren't going to be getting used, because these 2 decks, the Romanov Red and the Temur Energy, just made up so much of the meta at your local tournaments and Friday Night Magic that just nobody wanted to play. So you've got that problem, right? And then there's another problem that with one of the products that Wizards has, and it was originally called like Clash Packs, and then it was Tournament Packs, and then it went through a wide range of name changes and variations. But what it was a deck that you could take to your Friday Night Magic tournament, and it wasn't necessarily a tier 1 deck, but it was like the skeleton of a decent deck. And what you would do with that deck is you would buy it, and you could immediately turn around and go play Friday Night Magic and have a good time. There were some really good cards in there. There was really good synergies. It was all standard legal, things like that. And what you were supposed to do is over time edit that deck yourself, brew that deck, or tweak that deck yourself, and put in the cards that you want to make it your own. The problem with that is that the cost of those cards is so expensive that Wizards doesn't want to print those cards, and they tell you time and time again that they don't recognize the market, the second tier market, or the secondhand market, right? They don't recognize that, but they really do. I mean, they say that, but they really do. That's why they won't print these cards into oblivion, like Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? They will only print cards that are absolutely required. They need a reprint and things like Mutavault and Thoughtseize and things like that. They'll test those out from time to time, but they won't print. Put these cards. They won't build like a Romanov Red. You will never see like a Romanov Red type of deck. Tier 1 deck. In a package deal for you to buy. That just won't happen. Again, because they're quote unquote not recognizing the second market, but they are. By not taking any action, they are recognizing and they are commenting or whatever, or acknowledging the second market. Don't be stupid. So going back to those 2 problems, the problem with standard being 2 deck meta game, where if you're not playing those 2 decks, you're not really competing in the tournament. You might be having fun, but you're not winning. And if you want to win, you need to have one of those 2 decks. Second problem is this product they're trying to push, to get people to pick it up, new players to get involved with standard and kind of franchise these people, or if you haven't played, re-enfranchise you to get back into the game so that you can compete at that level. They have yet to do either one of those, because this is, again, this is the third time that we've had a major banning of decks, across the board in standard, and that's not fun, right? So my idea is kind of to cover both problems at the same time. So Wizards prints these cards, right? They have 4 sets that release every year. They're all spread they're 3 months apart. Those decks don't change, or those sets do not change whatsoever. They're printed the same way. Not the same way. God no. We'll talk about that in a minute. They're printed the same time. They're developed the same time. Things like that. The website shows some really cool statistics about their testing with these bannings or whatever. I would really like to see that in the initial development and design, so they can kind of catch these things ahead of time. But as a fail-safe, as a way to kind of stop this from happening without having to ban a bunch of cards, because nobody wants that. People want to open up packs and say, hey, I got a Feldar Guardian. This is awesome. This combo's off with Saheeli Rai. I'm excited to build that deck. Let me buy some cards or buy some more packs, and put it together. We don't want to ban any more cards. We don't want that to happen. Instead, Wizards, why don't you do this? Why don't you set aside a certain amount of money every year or every release for kind of like a a fixed set, or maybe not even, maybe it's not even a fixed set, maybe it's a fixed deck, right? So you've got these top 2 decks in the meta, and they've been the top 2 decks for 6 months, right? And you look and you've got this kiddie pool of money. You're like, okay, you know what? We need to take some time, and we need to develop, a 60 card deck, 15 card sideboard to combat these 2 decks, right? We need to take cards that are already in standard. We need to push those decks, those second, third, fourth tier decks. We need to push those decks forward so that they can combat the first and second deck. So like in this example, the Teamer Energy and the Ramen Opera Red. What does Pirates need? What do we need in Pirates right now that they might get in Ixalan? Right, they might get in Ixalan, but they're not getting, or they might get in Rivals of Ixalan, but they're not getting the original one. What's something that we can kind of put in there to push that deck forward, and build a deck, a 60 card deck, 15 card sideboard with some of those cards. Make those cards standard legal. Right, you're going to mix in some of the cards that are already designed and developed in the set, and you're going to put those in. And it might not just be from Ixalan. It doesn't have to be a theme. It could be cards that are coming from, any standard set that's coming together to build like a champion deck or something like that. Whatever it might be. So you put this deck together, put it out on the market. Obviously the ones that are numbered from, any set that's already printed, you leave those numbers alone as far as the set numbers and stuff like that. But like, let's say you're adding a couple extra pirates, right? Obviously those pirates are going to go into the Ixalan block. So like Ixalan, if you look at the bottom of the card, it's got 279 cards, right? Just the main Ixalan deck or set. Right, so then you make 280 of 279, 281 of 79 or 279, 282, all the way up until you've numbered the cards accordingly. And yeah, you're printing out these cards extra or whatever, but at the end of the day, what is that going to do for you? It's going to answer these 2 problems. First, it's going to fix standard because people can go purchase these decks or whatever and make these add these cards to their current decks or whatever. You sell it for an MSRP of like $50 or whatever, right? Someone goes in, buys a 60 card deck, 15 card sideboard for $60, $50, whatever it is, and now they can combat the 2 most popular decks in the series, right? Obviously, it's you want to have them have weaknesses to decks 3, 4, and 5, or some type of mix in there. So it's a very fine line. But what I'm thinking about is they've got pros that are already on the payroll at Wizards as far as their design and development goes, and their playtesting and all that stuff goes. Right, let these guys develop like 15, 16 new cards for standard to set the course for the ship. Like I said from the beginning of the episode, like banning these cards is not the way to go, but creating new cards might be. Right, so if you're looking at the dinosaur deck. What does the dinosaur deck need to become, go from tier 2 all the way up to tier 1, or maybe tier 1.5? Maybe it's not a full-fledged deck, but it has the power to defend itself against these Ramen Opera Red, against these Teamer Energy decks. And what kind of cards can we design to go into those decks to make it better for our players? And then soon enough you'll have these decks that are, hey, these are entry level decks that people can buy, they can edit and make changes to, and they can combat versus the top tier decks. So that's kind of my idea for fixing this banning issue that we've been having, or that has been going on for a long time now in this game. And I kind of want to hear your guys' thoughts. Is it a dumb idea? I know we have a ton of product out there right now that comes out constantly. It seems like we're always getting hit with this. And that's the thing. These champion decks, or these, fix-it decks, aren't the end-all, be-all. They're not the, they're not going to happen every set. It's just when something needs to happen, right? It just when instead of banning 4 cards or 10 cards out of standard, why don't we just build a 60 card deck with some reprints that are needed? Maybe, for instance, some of you've got Chandra that's going for $30 right now. You've got Carnage Tyrant that's dropping, it's down to the low 20s, high teens. Let's reprint some of those cards that are, a little bit higher in cost. And at the same time, we're going to answer the two biggest questions. How can I get new players into the game? And when those new players do come to the game, they turn around and get smashed by these two decks that make up, 50, 60% of the meta. How can we combat those two things? Obviously, there's not one great answer, but it's a conversation, right? What do you guys think? I want to hear about what you think in the comments. Let me know. So I'm going to stop talking about the banning list for now, and we're going to move on to something that's been going on for quite a while. I apologize, I don't have my overhead camera up and running yet, but I'll show you guys something. So we went to our pre-release this past weekend. Eli and I did, and let me tell you, I am not excited at all about some of these cards. Most notably because of the card stock. The print quality is god awful, and let me show you a couple examples. First, this has been going on for some time. So like this right here, I'll hold it still so it can focus. There, come on, focus, baby. So this right here is a normal green card, right? Look at the outline of the card. It's green. It's kind of got like a forest green color. Now look at this card. What the hell is that? What is that? Like, let me put them side by side. All right, those are supposed to be the same exact color, right? Look at the border. That's god awful, right? And it doesn't stop there, right? You've got like this card's got like a spot like across the nameplate. Oh, you can't see it. It's right underneath. It's right underneath the R in shipwreck, right? White spot, right? Printing error. You might say, Joe, you're being picky. Right? Okay, so here's the next thing. So look here, it says human pirate. You can't really see it because the stupid thing's not focusing. Come on, camera. There it goes. Right, human pirate. This looks like human pirate is written in bold. Right? It looks funky. Look at the smudge. Like human. Like, really? Come on, Wizards. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm paying for a premium product, and, here's another one. This Tempest Caller, color's off, right? There's what it should look like. Color's off. Terrible. You can really see it in the set. You can really see it in the mana costs. Let me see if I can get it up there. Right? The one on the bottom, so much lighter than the one on the top. Here's another one, right? This is a little bit harder to see. This is the first one that I noticed when I opened up. I even said to the guy across me, I was like, "Are your guys' cards like really off as far as the printing's going? Like, just the colors some are just so dull." So like the one on the bottom here. Come on, baby, focus. There you go. So like the one on the bottom, the skulls, the background around the skulls on the bottom kind of blend into the background of the nameplate. But the one on the top there, you can clearly see that it's like gray, and it's differentiating itself from the actual nameplate on the card. It's just, I don't know what they need to do to get this under control, but these are brand new cards, opened up. We haven't touched them. They've already started to curl, which is so annoying. When you have a card, I mean, it's not even foils anymore, and they're starting to curl, right? Like, come on, these are less than 2 days old cards that are I would expect it from the foil cards, because the foiling process does a number on the card. And if you don't put it in a perfect sleeve and like put it in a book immediately and like get it away from any type of moisture, those things are just gonna be like they're just gonna bend, and that's just what happens. But this type of thing, when you don't have I'll hold these up. When you don't have quality control checking your product as it's going out the door, like Legion Conquistador here, like you can it's even blurry and you can tell what's up. Like the bottom one looks like it's in bold. Come on, camera. Oh, it's not. Come on, get there, baby. Get there. Problem is Come on, baby. That's not focusing. Come on, focus. It's like, I don't want to focus on it. It looks so god awful. Hell, it doesn't even need to focus. You can just see that Legion, the bottom one is so much more bold than the top one, right? It's terrible. So that's one of the other things. I know that there's a couple channels on YouTube that have thousands upon thousands of hundreds of thousands of subscribers. There's very few that are talking about this. This needs to be fixed. Like, this is just ridiculous. This is a card game that you spent, a premium card game that you spend a lot of time on, or a lot of money on, and time for that matter. And the problem is when you're buying standard cards like this, they don't stay usable for not very long. But that's neither here nor there. I don't even want to get into that conversation about how long your cards stay good, or stay legal or whatever. But this is just terrible. Like, come on. Like, those should be the same shade of green, not aqua green. Like, there isn't a fifth color of mana. Like, Commune with the Dinosaurs, that bottom card should be green, just like Hunt the Weak. Those should be the same color. So, that's the next priority. Like, we've already tackled the background checks for the judges. I highly appreciate that. That's Magic headquarters, like, they headed that up, getting background checks for mandatory for all judges and things like that, and tournament organizers and all that. Like, amen to that. This is phase 2. Like, getting this cardboard stock fixed, that's in there. Getting the print quality and print check, that needs to be the next priority, right? Keep the kids safe, check. Print quality, next thing. Let's move on. So, all right, guys, that's this week's episode. I really appreciate you watching. Sorry it kind of got a little grim there. I did have a lot of fun at my pre-release. We'll talk about that in the next couple days or whatever we get a chance to get Eli on here. Have some fun, talk about what decks we played, what kind of cards we played, how bad we did, how good we did, and everything in between. We'll bring him on. We'll pick up some of our favorite cards and kind of talk you guys through what we did that night. We'll have the overhead camera set up so you can kind of see our decks and all that stuff, and we'll go from there. So, all right, guys. Well, I really appreciate watching. Make sure you head over to the YouTube page, youtube.com/72DPI online. Get subscribed. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you think about the episode. What do you think about this god-awful card stock and printing? What about the banned and restricted list? Did they do the right thing? And leave your ideas for how they can fix standard and this whole mess of banning and restricting cards. I would really like to hear from you guys. I really appreciate you listening, and let's keep it going, and have a great evening, and we'll see you next week. See ya.